Well, yep, I have been absent for a couple of weeks, you may have noticed. Part family holiday and then a conference in Hungary. In fact, let me tell you a little bit about Hungary and especially their family policies. So, Hungary is a part of Europe that I'd never visited before, and while I didn't get much chance to see the sights, we did have a quick look around, including the beautiful Parliament building. It's quite majestic. And in fact, at night, you can climb up to the spectacular Buddha Castle that overlooks the city of Budapest. In fact, it's called the Royal Palace. Some beautiful buildings up there, especially stunning at night. It's an amazing sight. And as you stand there, you can see over the Danube River and see the Parliament building. But in fact, in front of the building, of the Parliament building, is a water feature, and engraved is a verse from the Bible, which is 2 Corinthians 4:9, which says, "We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed." And it's in memory of the 1956 revolution by the Hungarians against the Soviet regime oppression. It's still a wonderful verse of encouragement and reassurance that God is always on the throne, no matter the circumstances. And if you know the history of Hungary, you'll understand just how significant and relevant that scripture is to the Hungarian people. But Hungary is very family friendly in its policy making. For 50 years, the West has experienced below replacement fertility, including New Zealand. And that's why we need immigration. And Hungary had the world's lowest fertility rate at an all time low of 1.29 in 1999. It now stands at 1.53. But fertility rates need to be 2.1 in order to be able to replace your population. They say one for mum, one for dad, and zero point 0.1 to allow for those who don't get married or don't have children. And you need that younger population both as a workforce, but also to be able to provide for the financial needs of an aging population. So at 1.29 in Hungary, that was disturbing. And even at 1.53, they still have some way to go to 2.1. By the way, New Zealand's fertility rate is about 1.7, which is also alarmingly low. So Hungary has made its focus to be on the support and strengthening of family. And in 2019, all that friendliness was bundled into the Family Protection Action Plan. It was a hefty pack of incentives for folks to have more children. And these were some of the policies: lifetime income tax exemption for women with 4 or more children, 3-year paid maternity leave, a $35,000 interest free loan for women under 40 getting married for the first time. And if the family eventually has 3 children, the loan is forgiven. A generous home mortgage subsidy for families with 2 or more children. Now, that would be great for helping Kiwi families into their own home, wouldn't it? Families with 3 or more children are eligible for a government grant of $9,000 US towards the purchase of a 7-seater car. Childcare payments to grandparents, catering for grandchildren, and even family leave for working grandparents to help with newborn grandchildren. I'm sure grandparents raising grandchildren in New Zealand would appreciate that policy. And beginning in 2022, beginning of this year, no income tax for those under 25 so that they can start saving as soon as they start earning. And 5% of their GDP is spent on these policies, which is a significant investment into families. But here's the neat bit: incentives take effect when expectant mothers reach the second trimester of pregnancy. According to Katalin Novak, who was the previous Minister of State for Family and Youth Affairs and is now the President of Hungary, she said this: "This is a philosophical aspect for us. We believe life begins at conception. We value unborn children, not only born children." Wow, how radical. So, what's been the result? Well, in the last decade, there's been a 24% increase in births, a 40% decline in abortions, 40% more marriages, which of course goes completely against the Western world's trend, and 29% fewer divorces. They still have a way to go in the fertility issue, but according to Ms. Novak, she says this: what we do in Hungary is decreasing or eliminating the disadvantages of those who are having children. All over the developed world, those who are having children are in a less beneficial situation than those who aren't. We want to eliminate these disadvantages. Now, they also have a policy of not allowing any radical sexual and gender ideologies in schools. Yep, none. You can imagine what the EU and the LGBT activists think of that. And actually, while in Hungary, I got to meet with staff from the Maria Cope Institute, which focuses on family policy, very similar to Family First. Now, ironically, this group is government funded in Hungary. Family First isn't. In fact, of course, we've been deregistered as a charity, which sort of shows the government priorities between the two countries, doesn't it? So, as is now obvious, Hungary's focus on traditional marriage, on recognising the unborn child, and on protecting young people and children from radical sexual indoctrination doesn't sit at all well with the radical forces and secularists in the European Union. But the Hungarian people don't care. They recently voted the government back into power at the beginning of the year for another 4 years with a strong majority. Perhaps we should organise the National and Labour Party conferences to be held in Budapest next year. They could learn a bit about good policy making. We should keep an eye on Hungary. They seem to be setting an example for the rest of the world in terms of family policy. Oh, just one other thing. At the conference that I was at, there was a delegation from Ukraine there. And despite all the challenges and threats of the current war happening in their country, this team was still completely committed and focused on their ministry and supporting families. It was very humbling, especially when, we may complain about little challenges that we have. That 2 Corinthians 4:9 is just as relevant for them. We are hunted down, but God never abandons us. We get knocked down, but we get up again and keep going. It was a pleasure to meet them and to pray for them.